Okay, so the Nets have struggled a lot versus the best teams in the league this season. They're 0-8 versus the top teams, or whatever the graphic is. 2 losses to the Bucks, 2 to the Bulls, Warriors, Suns. The Grizzlies lost recently as well. Should I care about this? Well, the first thing to say is one common theme in all this is the easy one to go to, is that James Harden has struggled in most of these games. I mean, last night against the Bucks, it seemed like Milwaukee was just ignoring some of the Nets guys who were spotting up. Like, there was a play early on I remembered where Claxton was spotting up from about 15 feet. Bobby Portis ignored him. David Duke Jr. was in the corner. Giannis didn't care about him at all. So even if KD and Mills were out there, Harden still had to deal with a pretty packed paint, and I think it led to a floater, and he didn't make it. There was one where Thanasis went straight up on him on a layup, and Harden missed it. He thought it was a foul. There was another where Bobby Portis blocked him when he and Harden got kind of tangled up. Maybe Harden would argue that was a foul as well, but the Bucks just did a really good job of basically not caring about the guys in the Nets who are not going to hurt you from outside. And I feel like this is something that has developed a bit out of nowhere for the Nets, where between the whole Kyrie situation and Joe Harris being hurt and Blake Griffin's three-point shooting falling off and them having to go to Bembry and David Duke Jr. and Cam Thomas, James Johnson, suddenly it's like, oh wait, we've got some dudes that we can just ignore. With Kyrie, I don't think this is as much of a big deal, and I don't think things like off-ball movement are as necessary. Still nice, but not as necessary. In terms of things like DeAndre Bembry setting extra screens like he did against the Pacers and all that. But without Kyrie, I do think these things become a little more of a necessity, and sometimes the Nets offense just slows down to a halt. And I mean, Kevin Durant's been so good this season that it hasn't been a huge problem, but I think against these good teams, and specifically with Harden, whether it's a coincidence or not, it's the first thing to look at. I remember the Phoenix game where the Suns were playing, it might have been a zone. They were at least definitely ignoring some guys. And I remember Harden just had a lot of moments where he passed out of opportunities where there could have been driving lanes, or I remember he passed out of a layup once and it led to a Mikal Bridges steal, and it was just well, that was weird. Harden did have 14 assists in that game. He also had 7 turnovers and he didn't shoot well. Against the Grizzlies, and that game was a week ago or so, Harden, he had a number of floaters over Steven Adams or Jaren Jackson that didn't go in. And they were kind of daring him to take that pull-up, and he just never really went to it. He did shoot a lot of step-back threes and all that, of which he did not make. And that's another thing. The step-back three, when it's not going in, it's very frustrating. But we've seen Harden terrify the hell out of teams with that shot for so long that it's it feels weird to say that he shouldn't shoot it. Of course, as I talk about this 0 whatever versus the top teams, there's other things. I mean, Miami killed him on the offensive glass in the 6th or 7th game of the season, I believe it was. KD had a tough game against the Warriors, and I think some of that was Golden State's defense getting a good contest on him almost every single time he shot it. I also think he just missed some shots that he typically makes. Anyway, let's talk about the defense. So for the season, the Nets have been good defensively. If you want to dive into the numbers, there are some things that suggest it might not hold up, mainly opponent three-point shooting percentage. So we'll see with that, but against the top teams specifically, I think there's times where star players are just doing whatever they want against the Nets. They did not have much answer for Giannis screening for Middleton last night. There were a couple times where Claxton tried to step up on Middleton, and Claxton's a mobile big, but it did lead to Giannis getting just a little bit of daylight, and then from there you're just done. Whether it's a shot for him or a pass to somebody. I mean, the amount of passes that Giannis had, there were skip passes to Bobby Portis in the opposite corner or whatever. There was a play in the third where he was posting up and they brought 2 to him. It was KD and Claxton, and he just comfortably spun around and threw a perfect pass to Middleton on the opposite wing. He was ready for whatever the Nets were throwing at him last night. On top of course, the normal Giannis things of being a terror in transition and all that. To give the Nets a little bit of a break, he did also make 2 threes and a mid-range. You do feel good about him taking those. It was a similar thing with Ja in the Grizzlies game. I haven't talked much about the 2 Bulls games. Harden did not play well in either one, but DeRozan torched him in both games, and a lot of it was there just wasn't enough resistance on him when he's coming across screens most of the time. I mean, he's getting a handoff from Vooch, and LaMarcus Aldridge is in a drop, and he's just a step too slow to get out to him on the contest, or he gets around a screen early in a possession, and Harden's the guy who's meeting him there, but he just kind of gets by him, just bumps him once pretty much, and he's by him to the rim. There were times where it's more of a simple ISO and he's able to just do that spin move to get right to his comfortable turnaround jumper from about 12, 13 feet out. And, there's not an extra defender. And it's just like, this is way too easy for the guy. I remember in the Suns game, it was CP and Booker just killing them on switches, like getting LaMarcus Aldridge switched onto him a bunch of times. And this all wraps up my other point. And this is something that Nets fans have been saying a lot when you dive deep into the things of Nets internet, and especially after these losses to good teams. Steve Nash is not as good as these good coaches. When he's up against Budenholzer, Spoelstra, Monty Williams, Billy Donovan, it seems like he's always playing catch-up. Now, I don't think it's all him, because I do feel like in a lot of these games, there's been a sense of the other team is super amped up for this game, and the Nets just seem like it's another day at the office, and I don't really know how you fix that, but it's not a great sign. Now, again, with all this said, they're 24-13, they're second in the East, and if you promise me right now that at some point this season Kyrie will be available to play in every game, then there's a decent chance none of this matters. So what does all this mean? I don't know. It's January 8th.